In Russia, I thought I'm going to write a book of every day that I was in Russia. But when I came back to Poland, I saw what happened. I said, I was in heaven.
As soon as we came to Poland, we knew that we were the lucky one by being in Russia because we survived.
Stalin's action of deportation, by coincidence, saved our life.
It was bad. People were dying from sicknesses, from hunger, but not from exterminations and gas chambers.
When it's meant to be that you should be alive, you stay alive.
Prior to the outbreak of the Second World War, 3,300,000 Jews lived in Poland. By 1945, only 300,000 survived. Of the survivors, approximately 80% escaped the Holocaust as a result of Stalin's deportation deep into the Soviet Union. This film tells the story of 7 deportees who in 1940 were sent to Soviet labor camps.
How long shall we wait for you?
I don't know.
We're waiting to reminisce for the wedding.
Everybody come first. Hi, how are you?
Today, Asher and Shifra Sharf celebrate their 58th wedding anniversary, surrounded by family and friends.
Okay, very good, not a problem. How are you? How are you, ladies?
Happy anniversary!
Many of the guests, like Asher and Shifra, were Polish Jews who survived deportation into the Soviet Union during the Second World War.
This is my wife, this is my brother-in-law.
The Sharfs have recently returned from a trip through Russia and Central Asia, retracing the journey they took during their 6 years of exile. This is the first opportunity for them to view footage from the trip.
It's gone. But how do they get here? The people that live here.
Подожди. Нет, это не это. Это... Наши бараки были из дерева.
Я знаю 3 барака, они совсем отдельно стоят.
Да, вот нам.
Вот.
Да, вот они раньше были 9 штук. Он
Да.
где-то он работал раньше на шахте, вот сейчас в машине сидит он.
Да,
Вот мы
это
его
вот
ищем.
вот
Разве с
дороги,
правой стороны?
Да, они с правой стороны
А нам
стоят.
что-то мастер сказал. Что? Значит, они подсказали, что вот мы проехали это в том же месте, но... Это вот...
Вон те бараки были, вон.
Вон те дальние, да?
Да, вон те.
Ага, то есть не эти вот, которые здесь
Нет,
стоят, а
нет,
те
нет,
дальние, да?
да.
А туда проехать, как туда проехать?
Только
Значит,
так.
по дороге.
По дороге.
Думаете, что это? Посмотрим.
On August 21st, 1939, the world was set on its heels by the announcement of a treaty between the Russians and the Germans, in which they agreed not to fight each other. The Nazi-Soviet pact helped set the stage for the German invasion of Poland, which occurred on September 1st, 1939. The German attack caused hundreds of thousands of Polish citizens to flee east. Among those fleeing the Nazis were tens of thousands of Polish Jews. By September 17, 1939, the Soviet army claimed eastern Poland under its pact with the Germans. Jewish refugees who had fled the Nazis were now under Soviet occupation. They believed Hitler would quickly be defeated and that they would soon return home. When the war dragged on and life under the Soviets proved oppressive, the refugees expressed a desire to return to their homes in German-occupied Western Poland.
All of a sudden, a German commission came to Lemberg and started registering people who wanted to go back legally and officially to the place in Western Poland from which they came. And it was a big debate what to do.
And then the Russians approached us, we should become a Russian citizen, which we refused.
We were not automatically issued Soviet passports. We were given a choice of either taking the Soviet passports or returning to Krakow under the German occupation.
A vast majority of the Polish Jewish refugees signed up to go back to German-occupied Poland.
We still were jealous at the people that stayed behind, because they were in their homes, they had their towns, and we were refugees.
Our family that was left in Poland, in Western Poland, German-occupied part of Poland, kept saying, come back.
Staying under the Soviets seemed to us the kiss of death, that we would never get out of there.
And we said, we want to go home.
Somehow we never thought that Hitler would last, but we had every reason to believe that Stalin would last.
Virtually everybody registered. I know that my father at some point went down there and registered.
On the balcony, I saw German officers taking movies of the tremendous lines, mainly Polish Jews, from cities like Krakow, registering to return.
The registration process was a trick. The Soviets had no intention of returning the refugees. Early in 1940, the Soviets began a series of deportations meant to remove elements of the Polish population perceived to be a threat to Soviet rule. Among those targeted for deportation to labor camps were those refugees who had registered to return home.
Each time a car would stop by the house, we would look out of the window to see whether this is for, these were the soldiers coming to deport people from that house.
The Russians tried to create calm and not to have any panic, to have it go very smoothly. So they smiled and they were very friendly.
They were saying, you are going home, we are going to send you, according to your request, to Poland under the German occupation.
So my mother took all her silver, we took a lot of clothing, and we were fairly well equipped.
The Russians requisitioned some peasant carts from the neighborhood, and we went on it the way people were driven to the guillotine during the French Revolution.
The station was loaded with trains. There were many, many trains.
And we were put into those cattle cars.
There were people all over. There were Russian soldiers ordering us into the cars.
They locked the doors. Women started screaming and hysteria set in, and they were yelling that they suffocating.
And as soon as we started moving, which was probably sometime in the afternoon, I realized that we were not moving west, but we were moving north.
By the time the deportation had ended, approximately 500,000 Polish citizens had been forcibly removed to Soviet labor camps. Among them, 200,000 Polish Jews.
In that car, as I remember, this was probably 50-50, I would say. 50% Jews and 50% Christians. It did not make any difference who was who. Some of the Jews were assimilated the way I was and some other people on that, in that car. Some seemed more religious and Orthodox, but we all spoke good Polish and we all considered ourselves to be co-citizens with the Christians who were in the car.
And we passed the old Polish border, and we knew that we are going deep into the Soviet Union.
We were over 50 people in one cattle car. There was no room where to sleep, but to sit, and then in shifts, you're sleeping on the floor.
The sense of confinement was pretty awful. The most unpleasant thing was, of course, the toilet situation, which most of it had to be done in that car, in that hole in the floor, separated barely from the rest of the passengers.
When we were deep in Russia, they'll open the doors.
From then on, the Russians did not care once we went into Russia, because nobody was escaping.
When you open the doors from a cattle car, there's about 10, 12 feet open. So the youth was sitting with the legs out and even singing songs.
We went through rather picturesque Belarusian countryside.
The landscapes were beautiful. It was summertime, everything was green and nice. The sun was shining, so it was beautiful, but our mood was not for it. It didn't help.
To me, at that time, I looked at it with an interest of a boy who saw a completely different setting, different surroundings, different atmosphere, different language.
We were passing so many different towns and even different people.
It wasn't a continuous trip. We would go a couple hundred miles and we would stop on a siding.
Every Russian station has hot water. There's a faucet, in Russian it's called kipiatok, and you walk out of the train with a pot and you fill it with hot water.
The Russians only gave us soup and a slice of bread every day.
So every station the train stopped, we had a chance to go down to trade a watch that we had still from Poland or a pair of extra shoes, to trade for some food.
I think it was 3 weeks, over 3 weeks, that we were on the train.
Depending which car you wound in, you wound up in a different part of Siberia.
If they disconnected a number of cars, we didn't know until we came to the next station. Our train got shorter.
They told us that they need 500 people to work in a coal mine. So they uncoupled the first 13 cars, which are a little over 500 people, and the rest went further.
People came out, everybody was telling everybody to go out in the middle of the square over there, and the nachalnik, what they said from the NKVD, came out, and he tried to explain, in Russian of course, which most of us didn't understand, that this place is called Chet, and that's what we are going to live. And if we are going to behave and be cooperative, then we are going to build here a second Moscow.
The barracks had a corridor in the middle and there were rooms on each side. And each room had a stove on what we cooked, and we baked matzahs there. This looks familiar. That's the way it looked.
It was just like this, with the chimneys and the logs, and there was straw in between the logs.
Есть комнаты здесь и комнаты здесь, да? Можно зайти. And that's the way it looked.
The barracks were simple, one-story, long buildings, divided up into rooms, And they gave each family like one small room.
The room that we were in were two families, and ourselves and another family, and some single men.
Because we were a bigger family, there were 7 of us, so they gave us at the end of the barrack rooms.
They stuck so much next to each other, you know, that they formed like a whole layer of some kind of mosaic layer.
And in time we learned how to manage the bedbugs, just like the Russians do.
The most common way was, first of all, to put the 4 legs of the bed in cups filled with water, so that the bedbugs could not crawl into the bed and move it away from the wall. Then we realized that this was not enough, that the bedbugs were much more clever than we give them credit for, because they would climb up to the ceiling and then parachute down onto your bed.
А вы тоже здесь жили, да? 2 года. А как живете? Вы работали?
Я в шахте работаю.
В шахте? Я тоже в шахте работал.
Он инвалид сейчас.
В которой
Вот
шахте?
видите, ноги нету.
В которой шахте работали?
Красная горнячка.
Это 22?
Да.
Я тоже там работал.
Нам на коляску-то, вот он инвалид, ему ногу отрезали, даже на коляску ничего не выделили, соцпомощь. Вот сами маленько скопили, купили вот эту коляску, а сейчас вот колесо спустило, и мы не можем нигде это колесико найти.
Это вам на память будет что-то.
Спасибо.
Окей, будьте здоровы.
Спасибо.
Будьте здоровы.
Счастливо.
We lived like the second door from there. She said there was a Jewish woman living here. She was 87 years old when her nephew took her to Ukraine. Probably Polish, and she probably a leftover from our people. She didn't have where to go, so she stayed.
There were some Russians there which were previously prisoners, that they decided to stay there.
The Russian population around us was extremely friendly to us. Almost everybody that lived there was at one time deported there. They were all deportees from the time of the post-revolution.
I was never aware of any anti-Semitic expression or any anti-Semitic incident during the whole thing. The Russians were not aware of the difference between the Poles and the Jews. The local Russians had no idea what the Jew was. When you spoke to a peasant from that area, the Jew to him was a devil, something from the New Testament. So when they saw Jews behaving like normal people, they were quite surprised. They had no idea that there were Jews like this.
They told us that we have to work. If we want to work, we're going to die there, and we'll never get out of there.
They say in Russian, they say, "Привыкнешь albo zdохнешь." You get used to this life, or you drop dead.
The women, of course, they heard it. They started to cry. It was a very sad day for us, because we were hoping to go back to our hometowns, wherever we came from.
There were no fences of any consequence. The place was surrounded by woods. I mean, really primeval woods. There was really no way of escaping.
Don't think about running away. Where can you run? They'll catch you in the next town. So you better stay here, make the best of it. And that's what we did.
яблони, груши, поплыли туманы над рекой. Уходила на берег Катюша на высокий.
They didn't have much to eat there, but thanks.
It came to us as no surprise that the only work we could do was either in the camp itself, taking care of the grounds, whatever was to be done on the camp, but most of it would be in the forest, because there was nothing but the forest around.
We were directed to follow over there Russian civilians, that they were in charge of our assignments.
Then came the realization on the part of both the inmates and the Russians that the inmates had no idea how to handle an axe, had no idea how to handle a saw.
Most of them were lawyers, bankers, accountants, very educated people.
But we caught on very quickly. The Russians showed us how to cut down a tree.
Our working day became 11 hours, plus 1 hour to go to work and 1 hour to come back. So we were actually 13 hours outside.
Labor itself in the forest is very hard. We had to perform a certain norm on account to make the day's quota, which was assigned by the Russian government.
And there was a list of people who fulfilled the norm. Our brigade, I'm ashamed to say, never made it to the middle even. We were in the lower half. I don't even regret the incarceration, that is, the resettlement in the camp, because I think that it's only there that I became a human being. Well, I became a man. I became. I was a pampered child in a fairly well-to-do family, and I don't think I would have liked to be my own friend, the way I was growing up in Poland. But the whole Russian experience made something out of me.
Узнал.
Есть,
Красная горнячка она сейчас называется. Шахта.
есть такой номер, шахта 22.
Да, она говорит, сейчас так не называется, она называется Красная горнячка.
Ага.
Пойдем.
Yeah. If there'll be something interesting, I'll call you, huh?
Вы здесь работали?
Да.
На 22-й?
На 22-й, да.
А 205-ю шахту вы помните или нет?
Которую?
Вот следующая была
он
там.
Он говорит пятая, да-да-да, он говорил пятая.
Вот, пятая шахта.
Там, где это большой... мой отец чистил лампочки для шахтера.
Ага, это ламповой он работал.
Ламповой.
Шахту закрыли.
Я знаю.
Естественно, здесь никого ничего нету, ни рабочих, ничего. Вот это все ликвидируется. Есть факт благодаря вам, то есть Америке.
Да.
Да. Вот. Угольная промышленность России вся закрывается только из-за Америки.
Из-за Америки.
Невыгодно Америке вот. И в результате у нас люди остаются без работы.
Без работы. А где котельня?
Котельня вот перед вами, вот еще труба сохранилась.
Ага. Там, я посмотрю, там.
Пойдемте, пойдемте. женщины стояли тогда.
Да, женщин породу
выбирали. Вот это породовыборка по-простому. Вот. И туда вот вагоны ставили и в вагоны грузили. Вот такая схема.
I asked about the jail because I was there 10 days, but because I went to Chelyabinsk without a permit, and I brought a letter from Chelyabinsk that I can get employment there. So I gave it to my commandant. He said, okay, but how did you go to Chelyabinsk without a permit? And then my mother came screaming to the police why they locked me up. So they locked her up for 5 days because she was screaming, she was fresh. In jail on the wall there's written, so здесь был не забудет. Кто не был, тем будет.
Whoever wasn't here yet is going to come.
I was encouraging.
You got 10 years. They give you 10 years. And the 9th year, they let you know that they gave you, so if there's another court on you, you didn't know, they give you another 5 years.
But actually going to jail was not the worst. The worst was when they send you away. But they send you away. They send you to Siberia and throw away the key.
There's no coming back. Forget it.
I used to come from that direction because I remember the position of the dining room. I came here with the horse and buggy, and I don't remember where I parked, but I remember the dining room definitely, and upstairs the shower room too.
Вот здесь
это баня была.
Баня, она и сейчас баня
сейчас
была.
Баня?
Да, да. Ну сейчас уже воды там нету.
Нету.
Еще помещения остались.
Yeah. Это столовая была?
Нет, нет. Это был зал. Здесь собрание.
Да.
Вот. Здесь вот стояли скамейки, стулья, здесь люди сидели.
Да.
Вот там много нашего помнит Владимир Александрович. Там не похожий.
But I remember having meetings here, that you work for the government and you have to do your part. And if you don't work, you'll never get out of here. They told us, you'll get used to it. If not, you drop dead here. But God made it different. All these people that are on this table, they worked here in the shaft and they got killed in the war between 41 and 45.
We worked there through the summer, which was not too bad. Then when the winter came around, it was really bad because it was very cold. It was so cold that sometimes when you spit down, that a piece of ice fell down.
And cold lasted for a very long time, from, I guess, early November to late in March.
I remember going to work 50 below zero. I packed my face up to the eyes, and here up to the eyes, all you can see is the eyes.
The policy, for example, was that you didn't go to work when the temperature dropped to minus 40, and then nobody went, minus 40 degrees centigrade.
There was only one thermometer that showed the temperature in the village on the office window by the nachalnik from the settlement. When it was colder than that, he used to take in the thermometer so people couldn't see how cold it is, and we still had to go to work. We had one well for the whole settlement. With the old type, we had to lower a bucket into the well and pull out by with a rope. We had to pull out a bucket of water, and everybody, of course, was spilling a little bit water. And around the well, which was like maybe 6-8 feet wide, formed like a mountain of ice.
And it was a really treacherous thing to get to crank the wheel and get the bucket up and not spill it on yourself, and not to slip and let the bucket go, because then the crank could kill you.
When we were in Siberia, there was still a contact with the family that was left behind on the German side.
To my dear brother, wife, and children, I've already written you and come again to tell you of my current situation. I've lost everything because of the war. My residence and all that I possessed have been destroyed. I fled from Warsaw to Russia, poor, with no clothes or shoes. The war made me destitute. Nobody knows what's happening with anybody. The old houses are gone, and everyone fled, not knowing themselves where to.
We got sometimes a letter. Of course, everybody was afraid to write the truth, if they are well or if they are hungry or not.
These days I am in the Urals, in the coal region. My husband works in the coal mine. I work on the roads, digging ditches. We don't know yet what our wages are, but you're surely aware that we must work.
They said very little about the conditions and political situations. They never touched that subject at all.
There was one postcard from my father's father, and he wrote in that postcard that we envy you being in Siberia.
Great cold will soon set in here, and none of us have clothes or shoes. My heart pains me for my 3 children. If we do not receive clothes for the cold weather, we will perish. It would be best if you could help.
I had a letter from my sister. She was older than me. And she was writing to me, "You were always brave, and the world belongs to the brave. That I ran away. She did not."
But that was the last time that we ever heard from our family.
On June 22, 1941, the war in Europe greatly expanded as Hitler attacked the Soviet Union, causing Stalin to enter World War II.
In 1941, Germany attacked Russia. We found out about it immediately. It was the first time we heard Stalin on the radio.
Minska, Zhytomyr, Odessa.
After joining the alliance fighting Germany, Stalin agreed with the Polish government in exile to open the labor camps and release the Polish deportees.
The commandant called everybody out and read an official decree that the Poles are being freed and allowed to leave the camp whenever they wish.
We were very, very anxious to leave that place, and we finally did.
The West was closed for leaving Russia because of war with Germany. The East was either closed or almost closed because of preparation for war with Japan, and so the Shanghai route was being closed. There was only one possibility open, and that was the southern way, through Persia.
The departure of some of the deportees occurred on Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement, which is observed by a day of fasting.
And we walked and walked, and I had a cousin. She was 5 years old, and one was 6 years old, and I was carrying her on my back because they couldn't walk so far.
We loaded up with a lot of provisions that we got from and started traveling.
And I went into a woman and asked if she can give us something to eat. And she gave us some potatoes, and I cooked the potatoes there to have food before the fast. The next day, we started walking, and the snow started to snow. And we walked the whole day.
My father went to the government. Somehow he got 2 passenger cars to go wherever we wanted.
So we came there. My father and my uncle were waiting for us. They couldn't believe it that we made it. One day it was about 35 kilometers and fasting. So they had for us some hot water and bread. And we went straight to the train.
They loaded us up on a train and we started traveling again.
We were frozen here, and we wanted to go to a warm country, and we wanted to be as close to Israel as possible. There was no Israel at that time, it was Palestine.
A lot of Jews from all over were already waiting for a train to go and decide where to go.
Well, we had 2 cars and we were 70 people. So it was 35 people to a car, 50 cars to a train. I believe it took us 2 weeks to get from here, from Chelyabinsk to Tashkent.
We really had no idea where we were going. We were going to go somewhere where it's warm, and we were going to investigate along the way how things were in every spot which we reached.
There were hundreds of other trains that we were passing by that were going the same direction. There was refugees all over the place, going south, and not only from Siberian camps, but basically from advancing German armies.
We were traveling again for weeks. We came to different states. We seen different people that we never seen before.
As we were traveling south, we found to our dismay that things are not so great.
Of course, we were hungry, so we figured if we come to the bread basket of the Soviet Union, that we'll be able to, at least not to be hungry, that we'll be able to get some food.
Every town that we contemplate staying, close to the Persian border, there closer, there was another disease epidemic. It was epidemic plague, there was bubonic plague, there was typhoid fever, cholera, and so on. So we kept going.
In that time too, every time they would disconnect some freight cars and drop off people on the way. And some people were dropped off in collective farms, which wasn't so good. But wherever they dropped you off, you had nothing to say about it.
We kept going to the last stop, and that was Tajikistan, Stalinabad.
There was one fellow who seemed quite operational, and he looked at the map. He got a map of the area, and he looked around. There was Samarkand, Bukhara, various places whose names meant nothing to us. And suddenly he saw Stalinabad. He said, well, you know, I remember Marienbad, I remember Karlsbad from before the war. Maybe this is a spa. Little did he know that Abad in Tajik means the city, and not Bad, spa, as it does in German.
They told us to get off the train doesn't go any farther.
And they said, that's it, get out.
We went out with all our little whatever we had, and we spread it on the ground away from the trucks, and we made camp there.
Когда мы были здесь, 55 лет тому.
Это
Евреи уехали, Америка, Израиль, наверное. У нас в Ташкенте очень многие были, бухарские евреи жили, очень много их же было. Вот сейчас нету почти их, все уехали.
Кушать на 2 недели.
Просто нам неудобно.
Там вот чайхана есть, чайхана это из Троха.
Ты знаешь где?
And they took us into a place that they call a chaykhana, which is a tea room, a tea house.
Tea houses being the central place where they all after work, they drink tea and talk, and they watch the foreigners. So we stayed there.
Я помню, рассказывали, во время войны, вот здесь мечеть есть, мечеть. В мечети тоже евреи поселились. Там, это... Аллаху Акбар, Аллаху Акбар, Аллаху Акбар, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.
And they took us to a building made out of limestone, which we later found out it was a house of prayer, a Muslim house of prayer. They were giving us to lodge there.
The houses were like mud houses, very dusty.
They live a very primitive life. The conditions there are very, very poor. The population lives on the floor. They don't have chairs to sit down. It's how they are used to it.
The sanitation there was pretty poor. Open sewers and open public supply water, very primitive.
And when you walked in, the first thing, there was like the bathroom. There was like a pit with 2 boards. You could see all this, what was going on underneath, the feces with the worms.
It wasn't so hatsy-tatsy, but somehow we got an apartment rented.
We had a room, we were all together, my parents and my grandparents and us. And next kibitki, next house was my uncle with his family.
Eventually in 1942, I got the driver's license and I became my own chauffeur, a truck driver.
My brother worked as an artist and I drove a truck.
I became a student in the Stalinabad Pedagogical Institute, which later on became the university.
We both went to school and we lived in a children's home that was originally started by my father. So we lived with about 400 Polish kids, 20% of them Jewish, 80% not. And we lived like one big family.
There was not too much work you could do there. Some people were working in a sewing factory where they were sewing army clothes.
First of all, this is the material that my sister and my brother and my father and my uncles all produced on the stanop. This is from Samarkand. I've been carrying it with me for the last, 50, how many years? 55. Measuring. They didn't have a measuring, so they go like this. This was 1 meter. From your nose to the outstretched arm was a meter. These are, what do we call things that you write from children? Wspomnienia Samarkandy, you see? Samarkanda. Pamiętaj, Haniu, że szczęście jest tam, gdzie nas kochają i wierzą nam. Na pamiątkę słodniutkiej i milutkiej koleżance Hanka.
The agreement between the Polish government in exile and the Soviet Union, signed in 1941, which allowed for the release of the deportees, also called for the formation of a Polish army and the distribution of desperately needed relief supplies. Outposts were established throughout the Soviet Union where Poles and Jews could acquire food, clothing, medicine, as well as register for the Polish army.
The Polish government promised the Russians that they will organize an army out of Polish citizens under the command of a general by the name of Anders, who would then go on the Russian front and fight together with the Russians.
So many Jewish people went and they enlisted in the army, but they rejected them. Not that they were not healthy or anything, they were young, but they decided not to take too many Jews anymore.
And my father actually took a train and went to Buzuluk and tried to get on it and take us with us. And they did take families, a lot of Polish families, into the army with the intention of going to Persia. They didn't take us. My impression was that they didn't take us because we were Jewish.
Even though Jews represented approximately 30% of Polish deportees in the Soviet Union, they represented less than 5% of the soldiers and civilians who left to British-controlled Iran in 1942. Among the reasons cited for this were anti-Semitism of a part of the Polish government in exile and the British prohibition against Jewish immigration into Palestine.
Please, we didn't see what we had. We didn't have brick houses over there. Look at that.
Look how beautiful this is.
Вы по нации кто?
Что?
По нации кто? Поляк?
Польский еврей.
Польский еврей.
Еврей.
Я в Польше был.
Да?
Katowice, Kraków.
Katowice, да. Я Bielsko-Biała, это недалеко Katowice.
Dziękuję.
Правый берег или старый город?
Там была главная улица, давно Красная Армия. Больница Ким.
Больница Ким? Что-то я не помню.
Нет, это не то. These houses were not here.
Вот местечко. И тут пансион. Вот так. Я думаю, хаузи брала, да? 4 года здесь жил.
Да. А там я тебе покажу, в какой квартире, да?
Да.
Там тупик до Ходжа, а потом другая лучшая квартира, тоже на Лахоти. Я найду.
Найдем, обязательно найдем.
Пошли.
Вы эту улицу помните?
Я знаю, была улица с базаром.
Unreal. Changes are unbelievable. That I remember. The only difference between this and our time is that our time they were on a donkey. And here they were on a wagon. Tupik Dot Khoja. Or Lachuti. We lived on two addresses, very important addresses. Tupik Dot Khoja was as big as this living room is, the length of it. A tiny little street with a dead end is called a Tupik.
Там была больница Ким.
Больница Ким был. Больница Ким.
Покрывает шар Тульской области, сколько и душевно привлекательного.
Я пойдем. Наверху. Это старый масjid.
Старый мечеть.
Стариков пойдем найдем там. И почти нашли, смотрите.
Ай.
He's taking us, the oldest guy in town.
Isn't it right?
Keeping us in suspense. Did he find it or not?
Сейчас старика, видишь, этот человек все знает. Он очень грамотный. Здравствуйте. Шводушми.
Руси граждане.
Как ваше здоровье?
Хорошо. Как ваше здоровье?
Лучше всех.
Лучше всех. Жил здесь 4 года.
4 года,
на Лахути, Тупик
По
Дот.
национальности кто вы такой?
Что?
По национальности.
Еврей.
Ага.
Еврей. Тогда много евреев было здесь. Да, было много евреев было.
Польские евреи.
Польские евреи, да. Я польский еврей.
Да?
Во время войны за Сибирь мы здесь приехали. Сколько вам лет?
Мне 90 лет.
90?
Да.
Да? Не, вот. Меня 80.
Мне 90 лет.
Сильный. Улица Лахути. Помните?
Помню. Была Лахути, мимо Госбанка. Сейчас находится Камоле Худжанди.
Вместе это домом, да. Сейчас памятник вот это Камоле Худжанди. Там сейчас бульвар.
Бульвар. Там в этом районе тоже была больница Ким.
Коммунистический интернациональный молодежь могу.
Она.
Коммунистический интернациональный молодежь.
Коммунистический интернациональный молодежь.
Молодец.
Да.
Там это место нету сейчас совсем.
Окей. Это улица Лахути еще есть?
Нет.
Это имя нету, вот улица еще есть?
Нет, улицы нет.
Улицы тоже нету.
Да.
Окей, будьте здоровы, спасибо. Ауч! Вы еще будете жить еще 20 лет.
Нет, я еще 30 лет должен жить.
Окей. Хорошо. Окей. Спасибо.
До свидания.
Надо холодильник.
У меня 33 внуков, 24 правнуков.
У меня 20 внуков, 40 правнуков.
Що до 90, що 9 штук буде, да?
Окей. До свидания.
There were a couple of years that was a lot of no food. There was starvation, especially 1942, 1943. It was a very bad year.
Things were very expensive. The inflation was terrible. The wages were absolutely, totally out of sync with what things cost. A charwoman was making 160 rubles a month, and that's what it cost for buy a loaf of bread on the market. And in the worst days of 42 and 43.
We got ration cards, and you stand in line waiting for the bread to bake. By the time the bread came out, it was very hot, but people were so hungry. By the time you got home, half of it was gone.
What is your name?
Asher.
Asher?
Yeah.
My name is Tahir.
Tahir.
Тесто сделает мука, вода, соль, дрожжи. Надо размешаться.
Мешай.
С пластинком крутится, да? Крутится. Потом с руками еще раз крутится. Вот так. Bunday qilinadi. Потом это. Вот так. Вот.
Десять минут.
Beautiful.
Валиля,
Yeah.
для вас подарка.
No. Мы уезжаем сейчас.
У нас обычай так.
It's kosher, but you cannot eat it with meat.
No, I don't think it's kosher. It's not kosher.
Shit. The Russian population, and the same thing goes for the Uzbeks and for the Tajiks. They were very friendly. I have no complaint. I can never say a bad word about them, because at that time there was no anti-Semitism. They knew what happened to us, that we are not from here. They also knew that eventually we go away. We were welcomed here. First of all, they pitied us because we ran away from the Germans, you know, and that's in their blood to be hospitable to the people, to any people, any people. It's American.
American.
Yeah.
Подарка. Поздравляю.
Спасибо. Спасибо.
На память, дружба.
Спасибо.
Будь вам здоров.
Would you believe that?
No. What did he do?
It's a present. Look, he never saw me in his life, and he never will see me. I tell how hospitable people were here, and that's why they helped the people. It's no joke. They rented an apartment, they helped you with this, help with that, because they know that we were refugees. They are so friendly, they'll give away the house, even if you don't ask for it, and it's an honor to them if you take it. You're not allowed to refuse. Okay. Look at the friendliness at the hospitality. We felt the same way. There was no anti-Semitism here because they are also Semites. They feel like cousins to us because they are descendants of Abraham and we are. All of Europe, they were preaching to the kids in school that the Jews killed Jesus, and here they didn't have that preaching.
ברוך אדוני אשר העולם הזה בכל יום אשר לא נבנו עד מכל דבר ועתו אשר דבר בית משה עבדו יעזרו להם למען גדול ממותנו על יזונו על אצלנו לאחזו בינו אלו לא כבוקו דרוכו בשמם זתו.
Look how the big station, wow, how many tracks.
I'm too excited now. That's how it looked. Here we lived in here, Shlomo, one next to the other.
Mrs. Sharp?
Yeah.
Вы здесь жили?
Yeah.
Узнаете?
Oh boy, I think we lived here and here.
Probably.
It's very possible. It's 60 years. Very possible. Me and Chaka slept by the window. My mother had tacos here.
We all got sick. It looks like one infected the other with typhus and malaria.
My mother was very bad. She had the typhoid fever.
The typhoid is a sickness that gives you very high temperature. I didn't know what was going on.
It was a terrible thing. The entire family was in the hospital. We had both sicknesses, one after the other, which drenched us out. We almost died.
And people who didn't have family, and they couldn't manage to get some provision, were falling like flies.
Born in 28, died in 42. 14-year-old boy. That's my rabbi's brother. Most of them died from malaria. Malaria and typhoid. That were the main killers. And there was no medicine. It's all Jewish writing. It has Jewish names, you see, a Jewish name. Here's a Jew from Poland, Pinkelfeld. He died in 1943. It seems that those years they were putting people here in this cemetery.
Got up in the morning, there were dead people all over, not just our people, but even Russian people.
Every day there was a wagon going through the city picking up dead bodies.
I came to Bukhara with a child, a few months old, but he did not survive.
We really were very glad to get out of it. We were sick for about a month. And we came out, we lost weight, we were undernourished.
I have a friend here alive that they thought he was in the hospital, and they thought that he died, and they put him in the morgue. But in the morgue there was one light burning. And he woke up in the middle of the night, he looks around, and he sees that he's in the morgue, frozen cold. He starts screaming and knocking, and so they came in, take him out. He's still alive. By now he's 90 years old. I drove this road 58 years ago several times. The first time to see my wife, then to get engaged, then to get married. I don't remember the road. At that time it was not paved like it is today. That's the way I looked when I got married. That's the guy I married. Her mother and her sister showed her like that, which means top. Stopped in Samarkand, and one of her uncles asked my friend, which I stayed with my friend, says, "Who is that young man?"
So he said, "You know, this would be a good match for my niece."
And from one word to the other, I got to know her, and we went out 2 times, and her father and her uncle were behind us to watch us.
And it didn't take long. We went, I think, one more time, and then he went home because he was from Leninabad.
And to make a long story short, 3 weeks later we got married.
The people came from all the sections from Samarkand.
First of all, we went by truck. By truck, we went from Leninabad to Samarkand.
I was drunk. What else was that time there? Just vodka. It was Friday afternoon. We worked 2 days before.
And then you came with all your handsome brothers and your parents and your cousins for the wedding.
It was a wedding like before the war. Big tables in a garden, and covered with white tablecloth, nice dishes, good food. I don't know how they put it together, but that's how it was.
But I still don't know where we got chicken and where we got challahs. I have no idea.
It was the first wedding in Samarkand. The whole town was excited about it and came to. You didn't have to be invited. You just came and you participated and you sang. No invitations, no anything.
So it was a nice wedding.
Салам алейкум. Салам алейкум. Это моя жена. 58 лет тому мы женились здесь, в этом районе. Мы женились здесь, это наша свадьба. Женились напротив, на Комсомольска.
Отца спросите, он знает всех здесь коренных.
Как зовут?
Как меня зовут? Ашер.
Ахмед.
Я женился с моей женой здесь, в этом доме. Может, вы помните, было свадьба.
На тот дом много жили.
Да. Сколько вам лет?
У меня сейчас 74.
74. Как будто вы были мальчиком.
А мальчиком был, да. Армию ходили здесь.
Когда мы здесь были, этому мальчику было 13 лет, его обрезали. Я видел. Ваши были. Кричали.
А может быть так.
Это как мы женились, это здесь. This is our wedding picture. This wedding gown is made out of a sheet. The sheet we bought on the bazaar. Every jacket made out of a blanket. And I say that at that time, we didn't know yet that you have to smile on a picture when you take a picture.
Boing. we gaan daar bestellen. Met many rapporteurs, we zijn tot 20 uur. Alle zusammen.
The war ended, it was like an uplift to us. We were very happy. The mood was very festive.
And then after a while, the Poles were allowed to go back from where they came from, and to go back to Poland, which was already Soviet occupied.
We finally went, the whole family, and a lot of more Jews went to Moscow, and from Moscow back to Poland.
The most disheartening thing about the Second World War and all our experience, I have to say, it was not Siberia, and it was not Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. The most disheartening thing was the reception we got in Poland after the war.
We arrived and we were greeted on the border with pelted with rocks and anti-Semitic slogans.
We came to Poland and we met with banners that said, for every carload of coal we get from the Russians a carload of Jews.
It was very dangerous. Like my wife went on the bus one with a lady, and they physically killed people on buses or on the train.
They came on the train and they took off all the Jews. On men, they can tell very easily. They just made them drop their pants, and they took them off the train and they got shot, with among many others. This was a Kielce pogrom already after the war. I knew these people. One left a wife and a child. The other one was a single boy from my hometown. And they gave their life after the war.
We did not expect the trail left by the Nazis to be so ingrained in the country, which lost 3 million people to the Germans, of non-Jews.
Every time I go to Poland, I go where my family perished. Every time we go to Belgium and to Auschwitz, straight there from the airport. My parents found a name of one and only cousin of mine that remained alive.
We had 200 people in Poland. One survived.
I lost about 12 cousins that they could have been lawyers, they could have been doctors, they could have been poets, they could have been big help to the society, and they were just killed.
My mother's family, we knew we were all together, but my father's, we found out there is nobody left.
I had grandparents. When the war came out, I had two grandfathers, two grandmothers, uncles, aunts. They all gone.
These are people that lived here with their families. These are people that lived here in Oświęcim. That's the Bobo, that's the Kiddush sea, and that's temple, the Moshe's temple.
The increase of love for another person, for a needy person, or for a good person is bigger and stronger maybe because of the war.
The war experience had made our family very close.
This is really a miraculous situation. Had I stayed in Krakow, had the Russians sent me back to Krakow, I would have ended up, in the chimney of one of the annihilation camps. Absolutely.
I feel guilty. I feel guilty that I didn't take anybody with me. I had younger brother, I had 2 younger sisters. Even though I don't know if they would have made